Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with the well-known local broadcaster, Jim Delbridge. Jim's going to tell us about the various aspects of his career. Good to see you, Jim, and thanks for coming on board.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks for asking me.
My pleasure. Now, let's start off because there was life before you got to the BBC, presumably. What were you involved with then?
Well, there was, yeah. I was educated at Hope Hills School in Guernsey and then the Boys' Grammar School.
Hmm.
When I left school, or in fact, before I left school, I was playing in bands. Always been a musician, a guitarist, singer, and a bass player. I've written my own songs even when I was at school. So when I left school, I worked in retail for a few years, but my main occupation really was playing in bands. And then
Hmm.
well, how old was I? I was 18, I think, and I went away to London with a band. We stayed in London for nearly 2 years,
Wow.
playing on the London pub circuit. And then I came back to Guernsey, carried on playing. Then I went away to Germany for a couple of years and did a lot of work over there, playing in bands and touring around Europe. Spent quite a bit of time in Berlin before the wall came down. And I used to live in Stuttgart, but I used to commute up to Berlin on a fairly regular basis on the train, going through Checkpoint Charlie and all of that kind of stuff. That was a really interesting experience for a young Guernseyman doing all of that. And yeah, played in a hard rock band up in Berlin. We toured Germany a few times. Then after that, I then got married, came and moved back to Guernsey in 1984, and that's when
Right.
I joined the BBC.
That's when you joined BBC, and you joined them as a freelancing as a presenter producer. So that meant you were on, the daily shows. But what about the production side?
Yeah, I was doing that as well. The way it worked was I got a job back in retail when I arrived back in the island. I thought I don't really want to do this. I'd like to get a job I'm interested in doing
Hmm.
after having played in bands for so long. So I decided that radio was the best thing for me. So myself and one of my friends, we made a demo of a radio show, and I went along and I played it to Tony Talmadge, who was the boss of Radio Guernsey at the time. And after a few weeks, he seemed impressed. But after a few weeks, he phoned me up and said, "Will you pop down and see me?" So I went down to the station. He said, "One of our presenters is leaving. I'd like to offer you the job of presenting Island Magazine, which was the Monday to Friday magazine program
Yeah.
on BBC Guernsey." And but it was a show that you did entirely on your own. So
Right.
you not only did you present, but you did all the production on it as well. And I have to say, Tony, that was really one of the best things that could have happened to me, because you learn on the job. You make your mistakes in public, but you're being forced to do everything. So after coming off air at midday, I would then take my Ewer tape recorder and go out and interview lots of different people and bring it back to the station and edit it all up. And then I would book other guests to come in. So you did it all yourself. So you
Yeah.
learn all the skills there and there in one place. So it was really advantageous for me.
So you were there for quite a while, weren't you, with BBC?
Yeah, I think I was there 8 years.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, from 86. Yeah,
Yeah.
eight
Yeah.
years.
How long had the radio station been going at that point?
Oh God, I think it was 83. It started.
Yeah.
So
So it was fairly infant.
yeah, yeah, it was fairly young,
Yeah.
um, and and quite old-fashioned in a way. But well, I suppose when you compare it to now, obviously everything was you edited on tape, so it was razor blades, China graph pencils, sticky tape. There was no obviously digital cutting and pasting as there is now. So it was, but it was great. It was what it was, and that's a wonderful place to learn those skills.
You can't beat being thrown in at the deep end, I think, in
It was
life.
that very much
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I went away. They sent me away to London for a week. I went to Grafton House in the centre of London,
Right.
and did a week's worth of training. And they showed me some of the basics, and that was it. Yeah,
So there you go. So you eventually move on to Ireland FM.
yeah.
How did you find that, given the fact that you're in a situation where they've got to sell advertising to make the radio station work, as opposed to the BBC that essentially just presumably gave Radio Guernsey a grant to keep running. Do you find
Well,
that
that's
tougher?
the Well, no, not really. I mean, it was. I spoke. What I did find tough is that it's working in commercial radio is certainly with Island FM and Channel 103, is that it's music-based radio.
Yeah,
So the kind of broadcasting I like to do is I like to talk, I like to interview people, I like to feature interesting subjects, discuss them, talk about them. With Island FM, what it was playing back-to-back music, really,
yeah,
with some adverts in between and little funny little witticisms that you like to throw in. It wasn't really my kind of broadcasting, if I'm honest, and it didn't really suit me. And in some ways, I pined for a more talk radio kind of approach. But yeah, so I adapted. My role when I first started there was I was sort of in charge of doing a lot of the promotions and bits and pieces. I then went back again after a while, and I became news editor. Again, probably not my core strength. And but I was there actually. The most interesting thing was I was there during COVID.
right.
So, I was deemed a critical worker, which meant that I would be allowed to leave home and cycle to work. And I was often just the only person in the radio station for, weeks and weeks and weeks. And then when we did the fairly regular COVID updates from the States, people like Gavin St. Pierre and Heidi Soulsby,
Yeah.
etc., etc. I would be representing Island FM, taking part in those, and that was really interesting. So, and of course, scary at the time, but
Very
yeah,
much
so
so, yeah.
that's what I did. Yeah,
So, I mean, following your time there, has it evolved?
Island FM.
Yeah.
It's different. It's different. I mean, when I was there, it was fairly obvious that they needed a new building. Their HQ was long past its sell-by date, and it wasn't really the kind of place you wanted to bring advertisers. So we would go out and see advertisers in their workplace rather than invite them to us. So, but I mean, they've corrected that now. They've got a brilliant new station, and it's something they can be proud of. They've changed their logo. They've changed their look. But a lot of my old mates are still working there. People like James Bentley and Carl Ward, of course, they're still there. Yeah, it's just a different place. Island FM wasn't really suited to me. I'm more of a BBC talk kind of guy.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I see on your CV that you're also involved as a Nordic copywriter, radio scripts for Scandinavian people and marketing for major companies. Do they have a sense of humour?
Who? The
The
Norwegians?
Nordics.
Yeah, they do. It's just slightly different to us. I mean, I need to nip this in the bud because, of course, I don't speak Danish, Norwegian, Finnish. I don't speak any of those languages. So what I used to do is it was very much a cut and paste job. You would take it was more admin than it was creative. And what I was doing was helping the Nordics, because the base for Specsavers is in Guernsey.
Yeah.
I was helping the Nordics come up with adverts and website design, but a lot of the copy that was written was already written. So my job was to cut and paste, hunt it down, find it somewhere within the Specsavers library and make these ads. I mean, it's I only did it for a short period of time. But what I also did, what's more interesting really, is that when I was doing marketing for some different companies, again, I was able to use my my music skills. And back in what year was it? I think it was around 1990. I was working for a company called KWL in Guernsey, and I managed for us to write, record, and produce the theme music for Tottenham Hotspur. And that was got through a client of ours who was part of a large bank. He was also a director of Tottenham at the time. And through the back door, we managed to get that. So myself and one of my colleagues, as I say, we wrote the theme music for Tottenham. And I'll always remember on the first match of the season one year, Tottenham were playing Manchester United at at White Hart Lane, and we were there. We were guests of the directors, and we were in the directors' box. And the teams run out onto the pitch, United led by David Beckham, to the music that we'd written and produced. So that was a big moment. That
Big
was quite a good
buzz.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
big buzz,
What
and that
was
sort of tied in the advertising marketing side with the music side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that during the time of Alan Sugar or after?
Yes, Alan Sugar was in charge. Yeah, he
Right,
was. Very,
okay. And he didn't
yeah.
say you're fired.
No, he didn't say that. No. And they used it for 2 3 years. And I remember it was out on because that opening game of the season was broadcast live on
Mm.
Sky Sports, and I remember people telling me that they could hear the music through the TV screen and stuff. So it's a big buzz. Yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's interesting stuff. Now, currently, Jim Delbridge Media, that's your main project, is it?
Well, it's one of the things I do. I mean, I suppose the BBC really is the big part of that
Yeah.
because I'm 67 now, so I don't work as many hours as I used to. I still, with the Jim Delbridge Media, it's really a podcasting service.
Hmm.
So what I do is I make podcasts for various organisations. I've done a few charities recently. I've done one for the Prio Library. I did half a dozen of those, and I've done recently been doing some for Les Bourg Hospice as well. But I'm always on the lookout for podcasting opportunities and helping people do that. Obviously, it's the radio skills you can bring into it, and so that's really what I've done. Bit of copywriting as well, magazine editing, that kind of thing.
And voiceovers, you say?
Yeah, did voiceovers. I mean, I used to, when I was back in my days working for the agencies, it was in the early days of Island FM, and I used to write a lot of radio ads, Myself and my colleague, Nick Windsor, we used to write, I don't know if you're familiar with things like Lennon Enid, the famous Randall's adverts from back at that time, and Norman Piet and Breda Lager and all of that. So we used to write and record and produce all of those. So we spent a lot of time in the studio. So I'm quite experienced working in studios and doing audio.
I mean, my experience with Key FM was that a lot of the clients wanted to do their own adverts. And in my view, it usually didn't work for one reason or another. So we did go out of our way to get them to have a professional production rather than try and do their own thing.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I would. I mean, it depends how good they are, I suppose, but you have to ask the question, why do you want to do your own ad? I mean, I wouldn't fix my own car. No. I certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't, re-slate my roof. So why don't you get somebody in who knows what they're doing and has done it many, many times and knows what works? That's my argument.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it didn't cost that much to do, actually, to get it done professionally. But there we are. Now, you've also been involved in a project called The Big Idea. What was that all about?
The Big Idea was an agency which I had with two partners, Ian Longley and Tom Robertshaw. We were known as LRD, The Big Idea. And really, we were a creative agency. So whether it was public relations, creative design, magazine, publications, all of that kind of stuff. But the idea behind The Big Idea is that we always try to say to our clients that you don't just come up with little individual sticking plasters to solve a marketing problem. You want to try and come up with a big idea which translates across lots of different genres and mediums. So an idea that would work on radio, would work in print, would work online, would work on TV. So that's the idea of not just coming up with small ideas, but big ideas that work right across the different genres. That's really what we used to do. Arini were one of our big clients back in those days.
In the good old days, Jim, when they,
good old days,
when they weren't the third worst airline in the world for punctuality.
Well, I remember
says it all.
I remember that at the time, I think Arini were voted Guernsey's most trusted brand.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. Yeah,
get that now. But back in those days, Malcolm Hart was running the airline, and it was voted the island's most trusted brand. And I think the Guernsey Post was second, something like that. So very different days. A lot of water under the bridge since then.
Absolutely. Now, what about this movie career that I've heard about? You've actually been in a TV German crime drama. What was that all about, Jim?
Well, it's not quite as big as it's made out. Really,
Looks big to me, mate.
to call it a movie career is a slight exaggeration. My eldest brother John, he lives and works in Germany, and he's been a TV director for many years. Very well respected in the industry. One of the shows that he does on a regular basis is called Was man ermittelt, which is a crime drama set in the mountains in southern Bavaria and Austria. And it's about an old school white policeman who has a new partner who's a black urban policeman. And it's the friction between the two different characters. John directs this. In one of the episodes, they needed somebody to play a washed up rock star. And John thought, who can I think of? I've got the perfect person.
He used to do rock and roll.
I'll ask my brother. So that's what he did. He phoned me up and said, do you want to come and do it? And I said, yeah. So I went down, spent 2 days filming down in the mountains. And I take up the final scene of this episode. I think the episode is 45 minutes, 50 minutes long. And I'm in the big final scene. And it was great fun to do. They had drones flying over filming. It's on Das Erste, which is the biggest TV station in Germany. Prime time. So I got to play one of my songs, which is from one of my CDs I've released called The Navigator. So I got a decent bit of exposure, but I haven't had any phone calls saying, Jim, we need you to star in this. Not since then, no.
Who knows? Perhaps the phone call's just around the corner. What would you describe as your favorite music?
Now that is a tough one because I would say it goes right across the board, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
me
anything from Ennio Morricone and Elgar right up to bands like XTC. I'm a big fan of Americana music, so it's not pure country music, but American music which is tinged with country guitar-based music. I love the Beatles. I love Bruce Springsteen. I love Tom Petty. And I still play in bands. I still featured in 2 bands. I play in the War Poets, which is an Americana band, and I also play in the Vinyls, and we gig regularly. Been up to Alderney, played in Alderney twice, Tony. You may have, you probably missed us, but we were there.
I didn't know you were in, Jim. I didn't know you were a member of the band. If I'd known that, I would have been in the front row.
Yeah, the Vinyls. Yeah, we played up there twice in Alderney week.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's good. So, I mean, I've got a pretty wide range of music likes, and very pleased we found on the iPlayer, a BBC iPlayer, Billy Joel's recent concert in Madison Square Gardens. He's been taken ill, as you know, but that was a great show, great way to spend a Sunday evening, actually. But there we are.
Yeah, I saw some of it. Yeah.
Getting back to more serious things, the future of local broadcasting, particularly as far as organisations like the BBC are concerned, given the fact that they rely on licence fees and the number of licence fee defectors seems to be increasing by the month. Do you think they're going to change it?
I think it's an inevitable consequence of the digital economy, the way that everything is going, is that there's diversification. The share of people's attention is obviously going to be shared over a much wider area. But what I will say is that I'm a firm believer in the license fee. I've always thought it was a very fair way of raising funds. And not just because I work in local radio, but I always thought that local radio was one of the key and most important aspects of what the BBC does. When things like, let's take COVID, for example, when things like COVID happened, when we had the storm, do you remember the storm back in 86? Were you there, Tony, then?
Yeah.
You know, when you need first-hand advice, when you need information, there's nothing better than local radio. It's the voice you can trust, you can rely on. So I'm a big supporter of it. What will happen in the future? I don't know. I do not have a crystal ball to predict that, but I really genuinely hope that it stays. And I can see it getting stronger. Why not? I mean, it will change in the shape it is. Obviously, there's much more online presence now. There's much more digital aspects to what the BBC does. It's not old school like it was when I started, which was, a radio service on the medium wave and on it, and on
Yeah, well,
FM.
it's
Not that
evolved.
anymore.
It's
It's
evolved
evolved
over the years.
hugely,
Yeah,
and it's a
yeah,
very different animal. Yeah,
yeah. But I mean, the charter I think comes up for renewal fairly shortly, doesn't it?
it does.
And
Yeah.
I honestly think they're going to have to sort of come up with alternatives to what some people consider to be an unfair tax.
Some people will say that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the argument is, which I agree with, and of course, not everybody uses it, but it's there to be used. I mean, I'm a staunch listener to Radio 4. I mean, I tend to graze throughout the day, not only listening to local radio, I listen to Radio 4, 5 Live, especially on a Saturday. I watch BBC television. I use the BBC website. So you're not just paying for what comes through your TV screen. You're paying for so much more. And I'm a firm believer that it is the way forward still.
We'll have to have a chat about this again at some future date, Jim, I think. Trouble is that it seems to me at the moment it's far too easy to set up a non-regulated streaming radio service.
Well, it is. I mean, not just a radio service, but a podcasting service doing what you're doing, Tony. It is unregulated, but even though there may be issues regarding the regulation of what you're doing, it's a wonderful opportunity for. I mean, suddenly the whole world have become journalists. The whole world have become broadcasters. They all, on their phone, they have the possibility to do all of that now, don't they? And that's exciting. I mean, what it also means, of course, is that the varying different standards of the output. There's an awful lot of rubbish.
Well, that's
there.
it.
Yeah, I mean, and you've got to wade your way through the rubbish to get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've got to view it in a positive way, I think.
I mean, we've seen a situation over here on Alderney where a lot of people defected to an online streaming radio service called Ryduna Radio. So the old playing field isn't particularly level as far as Key FM is concerned, because that's an Ofcom registered company, which obviously has to clearly fit the rules, which the other one, I'm not for a moment suggesting they don't, but the other one could perhaps take a few shortcuts. I don't know.
Well, if it's not regulated, I mean, of course, I don't know the background to either of the stations particularly well, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But well, that's what's happening with the digital economy, isn't it? That's all these things happening. Yeah.
How do you see the future of broadcast advertising, Jim? Because it seems to me the cake is of a finite size, and every time something opens up and gets into it, that's obviously going to cut the size of the slices down. I mean, if you take ITV, for example, they've got 5 main channels, haven't they? If you include ITV, BX, or whatever it's called. How do they make the advertising work on that sort of basis? And are they just taking hits on the amount of fees they're attracting?
Well, that's not a subject that I'm particularly expert in, Tony. I mean, what I can say is that I imagine, because you're probably the same when you turn on your television set, you're watching your favorite show, it gets to the advertising break, you fast forward through the adverts, so you get to the start of the second.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so they're meaningless.
Yeah. So everyone does that. So I think you'll find there's a lot more product placement in future. So probably television shows will be paid by advertisers to feature products placed within the show that is actually attracting the viewer. So in simplistic terms, the protagonist, the love interest in a TV show may be seen swigging from a bottle of a well-known brand of soft drink. You know what I mean?
You can say it on this one, Jim. You can say it on this one.
Well, drinking from a bottle of Coke or Fanta. Yeah. So they will try and get round the rules by placing products within the shows that people are going to watch, rather than putting them in the areas where they're fast forwarding through.
Yeah.
I don't honestly know. I mean, you're right. I mean, everybody's looking for finance, the economics of broadcasting, whether it's license fee paying, whether it's through advertising. It's all up in the air. It's all up in the air. The answer to that, well, that remains to be seen.
Yeah, but there could be casualties.
There will certainly be casualties.
Yeah. So
okay. The pot's only a certain size, isn't it?
Well, that's right. Yeah, this is my feeling as far as the whole thing's concerned. Now, you've got an election coming up in Guernsey shortly. Not asking you to actually promote any runners or riders, but it does seem to me, and Heidi Salisbury went on the record about this one, that it's impossible to canvass on an island-wide basis. And there are 60-odd podcasts available, apparently, to watch, half an hour each. Yeah. At what point do you think the electorate just gets bored to the situation where they don't turn up, or alternatively, just tick a few names on the first page?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, it's manifesto fatigue, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
That's what it is. I mean, I was not in favour. I mean, I have to be careful here because, of course, I'm even though I'm freelancing, I am at the BBC and I am going to be covering the election. When is this going? When is this going out, Tony? When will you be broadcasting?
This is going out this coming Friday.
This coming Friday. So that's after the election, after people have voted. Yeah. Well, I am going to be doing the programme, or if it's going out on Friday. Last night, I did the election coverage for the BBC on all the election coverage. My view regarding this is that, yes, island-wide voting, there are... it creates. I can understand why people in Catel or in Torteval or in Alderney want to vote. Can you vote in our election?
No. What happens? We appoint two representatives.
The state
to go down to you. Yeah.
So I can understand why somebody in St Martin's will want to stand for somebody who's standing in the Catel, and under the previous version you couldn't do that. I do understand that. But when you've got 88 people standing, as you rightly say, you're not going to listen to 88 podcasts. You're not going to read 88 manifestos. So it does create issues. And that is about, as I said, it's manifesto fatigue. And maybe what is happening is that people will then rely upon voting for names they know, faces they recognize, rather than on policy. So what I'm saying is that in my mind, it means that you may be voting on personality rather than on policy.
Because under the old system, which was more or less constituency based, there was built-in accountability. You know, if you were living in St Peter Port, you'd go to your St Peter Port deputy if you had a problem. That's not there anymore.
That is not there anymore. But I suppose the only accountability is next time you stand in the next election, if you haven't delivered on what you said you were going to deliver on, then the electorate will vote you out. They won't vote for you next time. But it's. I agree. It is the parish system. I think it was much easier. I think it was much easier to do that. Yeah. But it's time will tell.
Yeah, Jim, I'm sorry to have to say we've run out of time. I've really enjoyed having this chat with you. Hope we can have another one at some future date.
Yeah, well, I hope it's been of interest and been of use.
Well, I'm sure it has been, and I'm sure my audience will appreciate all you've done. Yeah. So many, many thanks, Jim. See you, mate.
Thank you.
Bye.
Podcasting. Keep it going.
Thank you.